Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. And our top stories today: think twice before refinancing that student loan and expect aggressive oversight of the student loan industry. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Betsy Mayotte. She is the president and founder of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy, great to see you. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's always a pleasure talking with you every month about student loans. Very important topic. We had a great conversation at the end of last year about baby boomers and senior holders of loan debt. But let's talk about refinancing loans, because there are pros and cons, Betsy, around refinances that I think the viewers and listeners need to hear about.
For sure. First I want to explain the difference between refinancing and consolidation, because I think there's some confusion there as well. Consolidation is when you take your individual loans and they get paid off and one great big new loan is created, and that's done on the federal student loan side. Now that's different from refinancing, because consolidation doesn't really give you a new interest rate. They do a weighted average of the interest rates of your underlying loans, and then they round up to the nearest eighth of a point. It's more of a way of getting all the loans under a single bill and maybe extending the term. The other reason that federal student loans might want to consolidate is sometimes that's the only way to get access to a particular program. For example, when we were talking about the older borrowers last month, Parent Plus loans can only get access to an income-driven plan if they do consolidate. Now, refinancing is when you're looking for completely new terms and hopefully you're getting a lower interest rate or a different interest rate. That's only seen on the private student loan side. Now, there are some, federal student loan borrowers that say, oh, look, the interest rates are really good on the private loan side. Maybe I should refinance my federal loans under a private student loan to get this lower interest rate. In almost all cases, that's a terrible idea. The reason it's a terrible idea is doing so means losing access to all your federal protections and benefits, such as public service loan forgiveness, an income-driven plan. If things go south for you financially, you wouldn't be able to get the deferments or other lower payment options that you might be eligible for now under the federal program. Now, if you have private student loans, refinancing can be a great way to lower your interest rate. It's also a way to drop your cosigner. If you have a cosigner on your loan and you want to ameliorate them from their liability of that, then refinancing can be a way to do that. The problem is that a lot of the best deals in refinancing, they're only picking sort of the cream of the crop. Super high credit scores, really good debt to income ratios. They're even looking at what college you went to, whether you graduated, and what you're doing for a living. So it's important to do your research and make sure that you have several options that you're looking at if you're looking to refinance.
Those are great points. I bet a lot of people hadn't even considered the loss of some of those federal protections, Betsy. Now, you bring up credit reporting. When you refinance a student loan, A, do you pay a fee to do that like you would refinance your mortgage? And B, do they ping your credit report? And does it is there a hard hit to your credit report like any other inquiry that's typically done to assess credit?
Depends how you're going about it. There's some services out there that aggregate the different offers. And if you're using like a Credible, for example, if you're using one of those services, they tend not to do a hard pull initially, but when you actually go and fill out the application, they'll do a hard pull. And I forget your other question. I'm sorry.
My question was about, no problem. My question was about fees. Are there fees associated with doing this?
Usually there is not a fee for applying for a private loan refinance. There is usually not one.
Okay, so that's good news. Now, Betsy, the other thing, I want to come back to this refinance issue loan in a second, but before I forget, I want to ask you about the delay of payments that we had throughout the CARES Act. for at least for federal loans, right? You had people who could hold off on making student loans or loan payments, and the interest. Are you getting any sense for whether or not, and that was expanded again, I think, till maybe end of January, if I'm not mistaken. You'll correct me, I'm sure. But what about going into the future? Because as we talked about in the green room prior to this, COVID is still running rampant. A lot of people still don't have jobs. They're having some financial difficulties. Is this expected to continue?
We know for a fact it's going to continue. The Biden transition team announced on Saturday, I think, over the weekend, that one of the very first things that he's going to do is to extend the interest waiver and the payment waiver. And we are expecting this to be what we call a clean extension, meaning whatever rules apply right now is what's going to apply when he does the extension. Now, they didn't say how long the extension would be. And the chatter in the industry, the speculation is anywhere. I've heard April, I've heard September. My personal thought is June. I'm putting my money on June that's what it'll be extended to.
Okay, well, that's certainly good news for those federal borrowers that have not had a job or are still under financial strife. Now, back to this refinancing decision that's really important. What's the starting point for all this? You mentioned, we talked about fees, we talked about credit, we talked about the removal of the cosigner. Where do you start? If I want to go ahead and refi my loan, let's just say I've vetted all that. Where do I start to do this? Do I just take a sheet of paper and start to make comparisons to what I have? What's the best rule of thumb here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, take a look at the interest rates and the terms of the loans you have now. I run into people that have asked me about refinancing and their rates are already in the threes. You're probably not going to get much better than that. So is it worth refinancing at all at that point? And then the next is just do your homework. You want to compare the terms that are available for the different lenders. What are they looking for a minimum credit score? Like I said, there are aggregators out there on our website. So we don't promote one lender over another. But what we do, just to make it easier for people, is we list all the private loan lenders that we know of in alphabetical order on our site. So, you could just print that out and use that as your list to start sort of comparing the offers that are available.
And just so everyone knows your site, it's TSLA.org, is that correct?
freestudentloanadvice.org.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. freestudentloanadvice.org. Makes a lot of sense. Well, Betsy, I want to go to a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Betsy about expecting more aggressive oversight of the Student Loan Administration. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Betsy Mayotte of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy, thanks for staying with us this morning.
Sure thing.
And also, I just want to reiterate, freestudentloanadvice.org. All the things we're talking about today, especially the comparisons we mentioned, you can find on Betsy's site, well-maintained, well-documented. So let's talk about the Consumer Protection Finance Board, the CPFB, established under I believe, the Obama administration. And now we're expecting it to be much more aggressive in the new Biden administration around the monitoring of student loan providers and the companies around them. What can you tell us, Betsy?
So not just the CFPB, but the Department of Education itself under this administration, I fully expect maybe within the first 100 days, which is the first 100 days under any new administration is a really important period of time. It's seen as sort of a precursor of what the rest of the rest of their time is going to look like. But we're fully expecting the new administration to spend that first 100 days aggressively rolling back essentially the rollbacks that the current administration did for a lot of student loan protections. For example, one of the biggest, in my opinion, sins committed by what is soon to be the prior administration is how they've handled what's called borrower defense to repayment, which essentially is a protection for students that attended a school that that turned out to be fraudulent. So they didn't agree with the process that was in place, so they rolled it back and made it very difficult for borrowers to get relief. So we fully expect them to sort of refresh the borrower defense rules. Also, I think there's going to be a stronger eye put on school accreditation organizations, because they're seen as part of what we call the triad of oversight when it comes to colleges and universities. Now, the triad is the Department of Ed, the accreditors, and the states. The CFPB as well, they had, in the beginning of the current administration, they had sort of a relationship with the Department of Ed where they weren't working together where they really should be. So I would be very surprised if we didn't see sort of a new era of cooperation, of oversight and consumer protection between the CFPB and the Department of Ed under the new administration.
So given this return to some of these protections you were outlining, what can we expect in terms of the industry reaction? Maybe the previous administration was more favorable to some of these industry organizations, these companies that are in the space, because they were a little bit more lax. With this greater oversight, would you expect obviously more scrutiny, but would that maybe raise costs and some of the other things that may come from some of the scrutiny, the more regulatory hurdles that you have to go through?
It's funny that you bring that up. So I've participated, the process for changing most federal student loan regulations is a process called negotiated rulemaking. And that's when a representative from each interested party, so one from four-year colleges, one from student loan lenders, one from student loan servicers, and student loan advocates, like they all get at the table and try to come to agreement about the way a regulation should be written. And anytime one of these oversight rules come up, the reaction is always the same. The cost of this is going to put us out of business. Well, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've never seen the cost of any oversight rule actually put a school out of business. certainly anytime you put protections in place and new rules, there is going to be a cost. But to me, the cost of not having those protections in place far outweighs the cost of implementing them. It's like, well, it's like saying, I don't want to buy smoke detectors for my house because I don't want to pay the money. Well, the cost of losing your house to a fire is much bigger than the cost of the fire putting the smoke detector in. And this is the same idea.
Now, Betsy, one of the other things being floated, I'll come back to oversight in a second, but we had talked all throughout last year, all throughout 2020 about excusing some student loan debt. And obviously we have a new administration. Any thoughts there, like whether or not this is a serious, it was discussed about during the campaign, but is this something that could be implemented? If so, different tranches, different levels? What are you hearing there?
Yeah, so this is a really common question I've been getting lately. Are we going to have broad student loan forgiveness? The first thing that's been made very clear by Biden is that he's not going to do it through executive order. It has to be done through Congress. So he's expressed support for broad student loan forgiveness many times over recent weeks, but he follows it up by saying, so Congress needs to get to work. So that's our sign he's not going to use executive order for it. So now let's look at Congress. Now, the Democrats, who are the ones that are in favor potentially of broad student loan forgiveness, they hold all three branches of government, which hasn't happened since, is it 1988? I might not have the year right. But that doesn't mean that's that we're going to get the forgiveness. It's still a very controversial issue. I don't see... There's a couple things going on. First of all, I don't see broad student loan forgiveness happening unless they address the actual problem, which you and I have talked about before, Jeffrey. The problem isn't student loan debt. The problem is the cost of higher education. Student loan debt is the symptom. And I don't see them forgiving a pile of money only to have that money accrue again. So Congress would have to take up a pretty big piece of legislation. And in December, as part of the spending bill, they addressed a lot of higher ed issues. So I think their appetite for dealing with a broad student loan policy is probably pretty slim right now, which is my long-winded way of saying I don't see broad student loan forgiveness anytime soon, but I don't think it's impossible.
Betsy, in terms of educating individuals on student loan debt, what that means, what it takes a student loan, how about any thoughts there about education? I mean, education's a big part of what you do, right? I mean, that's a big part of what TSLA does every day, informing people, educating people. But what about more broad education? Maybe when people are in middle school or high school, they're starting to think about college and how do you pay for college? I mean, is that the time to really push more education? And push might be the wrong word, but maybe make that part of the high school curricula, perhaps?
We absolutely have an issue with financial literacy or lack thereof in this country. An interesting statistic that I came across a couple months ago is that parents said that 60 or 65% of parents said they'd rather talk to their children about sex than money. So if they're not getting it at home, they certainly need to be getting it in school. So, I think they should start teaching financial literacy in kindergarten. And I think the stronger financial literacy education we have across the board with all age groups is something else that can help ameliorate the student loan debt issue.
Yeah. Well, I know it's something that you strive for a lot with your organization. We try to do it here on BRN, and it'd be great to see the schools. And even look, you need education for people who are my age, right? In their 40s and 50s. You don't know everything, even at our age, and you learn through experience. And I think it should be a continuing ed program. Well, Betsy, We're going to leave it there. Great to see you as always. Wishing you a happy new year. And we look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
You too. Thanks again.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited? And do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.